A second point about survival is the ability for the business to maintain its relationship with its suppliers as well as people who buy the goods of the particular enterprise. So it's a both a forward and backward linkages that you need to keep, because again, without keeping that, then the business will not survive the COVID period. And keeping business active during the period means income tax. I'm aware that the government, GRA, has given some room for filing of returns, etc. But nevertheless, it has to be paid. Payment of staff and staff costs and related issues. Again, I'll come to specific provisions that have been made in policy and law as we go along. The next point has to deal with the operational continuity challenges of the COVID, and I'm still on the survival aspect of the COVID. First, even with the removal of the restrictions, there is a large amount of fear in the workplace, which means that social distancing or physical distancing in the workplace is what we have to observe in order to reduce the fear that employees will have. Working from home measures for various businesses is critical, and indeed being able to continue to work from home if necessary. And again, that means that we all recourse to technology like the one we are doing now. But if we are recourse to technology for survival, then you must realize that this is the time that criminals also try to infiltrate. There have been several instances where people have infiltrated into Zoom meetings and other types of meetings, and in fact, people have had a situation where their accounts have been hacked. So without combating or putting in place a strategy to actually mitigate the attack criminals who be impacting on your business, the business is already suffering or having challenges as a result of COVID will suffer more because we fail to put in the business continuity strategy measures to combat criminal activity. So it's not just a question of business continuity, but it's a question of ensuring that the business continuity is also observing the side effects, for want of a better word, of that business continuity strategy. I think let me move to the next point on the survival regarding some sector-specific impacts, and mainly we all talk about the forward and backward linkages between the travel industry leading to the hotel industry and to industries of conference organizers, car hire, restaurants, catering. All these things have a chain which then affect other businesses, but it will lead to a situation which is often not talked about, the question of workload of staff. And that workload of staff is actually what leads to all the various challenges regarding labor that we focus on. So if you look at the Labor Act, Act 541, the emphasis is on the fact that the employer's duty is to provide work for the employee. But what if the work is not there? Then the employer is open to all kinds of avenues as to what to do, whether it's termination, etc., etc. So because of the lack of workload resulting from the COVID, you will see that the many issues which have arisen, which are of legal nature, include what can you do? Is it a question of annual leave, they taking annual leave, unpaid leave or unpaid leave? Is unpaid leave allowed under our law? The answer is obvious, no. But can you do that in the COVID era? Maybe during question time, if there are discussions, we can talk about that. Working from home, what are the protocols? How do you ensure that an employee, for example, who is paid, example, on time basis, is actually working on home from home? Introduction of shift system, pay cuts, redundancies, temporary layoffs, the fact that we have got provisions in our law which is against reducing or creating a diminution in the salary of staff. All these have become issues that are of legal nature, which have resulted. And if you have to, for example, let's say you want to do redundancy, the provision of a 3-month notice or payment of 3 months salary in lieu of notice further creates a further burden on the already burdened SMEs and even the big companies as well as MSMEs as well. So that chain is something that you need to have strategies to combat. Again, on survival, there have been a number of policy directives as well as laws that either can help us to survive or will help us manage it very well. So, for example, Greater Accra Regional Administration has a directive on wearing of masks. You have a situation where the Bank of Ghana issued a regulatory directive and reduced policy rates. by 150 basis points, that definitely will have a direct linkage on the ability or on the size of loan. So again, what it means is that for a business to manage properly, this is the time to speak to your bankers regarding whether or not your loan agreement can be renegotiated on the basis that the central bank has already dropped the monetary policy rate, or even on the simple directive from Bank of Ghana that the dividends distribution for the period should be suspended until further notice. That means the banks have got a greater level of liquidity. Is it time for businesses to begin to talk to their banks? Then there is also the law regarding the National Trust Fund to support frontline medical staff. So if you happen to be in the medical industry, are these laws you can take advantage of? Then the other one, I'm sure the person who will speak on tax will elaborate more on this. The fact that donations made to the recovery corona fund is become tax deductible, the extension for filing of taxes, etc. All these are legal regimes and policies that have been put in place which businesses can take advantage of. But I recall Professor Kote talked a bit about the adequacy or otherwise of the alleviation measures. I think I want to take a look at the law itself and break down the alleviation measures into the category. If I take a look at it, some is going to buffer stock company, support for water, which he talked about, health. But what I agree with him completely has to do with the soft loan allocation, and which again, the president of the chamber also talked about the inadequacy. So again, I think when it comes to that, it's a question of businesses acting as a collective to be able to impress upon government to improve upon the support. Then there are the famous legal issues of force majeure and frustration, which in my view has been talked about so much. But there is an aspect I need to talk about. I think it is often misplaced. I've seen many people simply recourse to force majeure or frustration just because of COVID. In my view, we may have a situation where after COVID, there will be a lot of legal issues of disputes regarding when force majeure applies and when frustration applies. I mean, simply put, we are talking about a situation where in force majeure, you have set out the areas or scope of items which may constitute force majeure, excuse me. And then the issues of frustration, which as a result of some things that you did not predict, created a situation where a contract to be performed has been frustrated. But that is the extent to which it goes. If, for example, I was representing a client who is now losing some benefit under a contract because there is force majeure or frustration, what I, as a lawyer defending him or representing him, will be looking at is whether or not the situation is actually directly attributable to COVID. So, for example, if you have to give me some supply of rice or some supply of goods, or install a plant for me because you are importing the components from a certain country, and you were to install them by, let's say, March 25th, and you tell me in April that the delay is resulting from force majeure or from frustration, I'm definitely going to say no. The simple reason is that if you were to install it on March 25th, then I assume that before the lockdown was imposed in Ghana, you will have already shipped the items to Ghana. And clearly, if you look at the restrictions imposed by the government of Ghana, they exempted certain specific areas. So I'll be looking at whether or not the area that your contract is with me is exempted, and whether or not, for example, the port is operating and you could have cleared your goods from port. So this intention to quickly run to force majeure and frustration, we should take a second look at it. And lastly, any court which is taking a look at such a dispute will look at what measures were put in place by both parties to mitigate the impact of COVID-19. So I thought I should draw attention to that. Then the next issue to tackle has to do with the impact of the disruption itself. And again, this time I'm moving to the strategy aspect. I think there are two key things that businesses must look at: whether the impact is temporary or permanent, or medium term or long term. And again, I've seen many businesses seeking to put strategies in place for permanent solutions, which for things which are otherwise temporary. And I'll explain what I mean. So, for example, if you operate a conference facility, and I'm not talking about hotel, if, for example, you run a conference business, the disruption in your business is actually medium term or permanent. It is not short term. even if COVID goes away, people are not just going to be traveling and holding physical conferences for a very long time. A lot of people are going to stay online for a very long time, like we are doing. But if you were operating a business, which, for example, is in the business of sewing PPEs or medical equipment, the solution is actually temporary and not permanent. People are not going to be wearing masks over the next 5 years. They are going to be wearing masks over the next 2 or 3 years. So, for example, if you install the plant and the plant is meant to be supplying masks, then you have to ensure that the life cycle of the amortization of that plant is equivalent to or less than the period for which that particular activity or intervention will last. So that's the other important point we need to look at. Then the last point on survival is a question that I don't hear asked very often. What if COVID returns? Let's assume we are on the downward trend. We are understood we have peaked. Let's assume COVID goes away. What if it returns? Because in the business continuity plans, what I encourage businesses to do is to use the lessons learned in COVID to put in measures in the what if situation. And then I'll use my own business as an example. Long before COVID, we simulated all the business continuity issues and we looked at fire, water, etc. Nobody predicted COVID. Then COVID happened. What has happened is that we will now use the lessons we've learned from COVID to improve upon our business continuity strategy. So in case COVID returns, then we are better equipped this time than we were before COVID. And I encourage businesses to have that what if scenario. Now let me move to the last part so I can bring the presentation to an end, which is the question of growth. Now, you cannot grow if the business didn't first survive. So if you have not put in place survival measures, don't bother about growth. Now, growth has got 3 areas. One is the foundation for growth that was laid before COVID. Again, if you are not laid a foundation before COVID, forget about growth. The second is how you ensure that the growth strategy itself survives COVID, because it is possible that you may have a growth strategy which itself has been rendered completely nullified by COVID. So if your growth strategy, for example, was designed to, and again, let me use the conference example, to increase the number of conferences that people attend in your hotel, that aspect of your growth strategy is gone and gone for the medium, short to medium term, or perhaps in the very long term. So that ability to let the growth strategy survive will only happen if you understand how to innovate to allow that growth strategy to survive the COVID period. So that's the other part. Then lastly, your strategy for growth itself will be based on whether you were positively or negatively impacted by COVID. So for example, I've given the one about sewing mask and all the rest. That is a positive impact on your business, because if you were not sewing mask previously, now you are not sewing mask, then there's a positive impact. But that impact is only medium term at best. Now, if it was negatively impacted, like the example I gave about the hotel, that is also an opportunity for growth in the sense that you may then now decide that my growth area is to now do online delivery. And again, if you notice, the relaxation of the restrictions that the president announced includes the fact that even now sit-in is allowed, provided you actually observe the physical distance. And I think I've seen a circular from the Ministry of Tourism to that effect. But you see that suddenly smart hotels and businesses and restaurants are now moving to online delivery and innovating in that era. So even though it is negative, you can attract growth in certain areas. Or if you take the situation of the telecom industry, the growth will be in the data sector, but voice may reduce. So these are, then again on growth, and I have a few minutes to go, the after COVID opportunities are the areas that we have to be looking at as businesses to see how we tap into the after COVID opportunities. And after COVID opportunities will relate to the disruptions, the effect of the disruptions that COVID has brought about. And a few examples will suffice, then I can conclude there. One is domestication of purchases. Definitely the government, and not only Ghana government, governments across Africa and worldwide are looking at domesticating purchases. Are you in the line of business whose purchases are now not going to be in China or US, but domesticated? And how do you ramp up your production and attract businesses from that line? The other one is the opportunity created by the need for alternate supply chains, because governments around the world are looking for alternate supply chains. So for example, are you in the line of business where you can now attract business away from China or from different countries. And if you look at that, opportunities must also be looked at in line with other things which are happening. So, for example, in Africa, the free trade agreement, whether it still starts in July on July 1st or delayed to January, one of the two will happen. Either way, your ability to position your business to be able to take advantage of the greater opportunities supply in the post-COVID period will make you able to ramp up production now or position yourself to provide services to the wider continent. And I think it is important that we understand that this is one of the new things which will be emerging. Or, for example, if you realize that as a result of COVID, there will be a lot of interest in pharmaceutical and medical industry, and also in environmental issues, then you may be positioning your businesses and innovating in those areas that will engender growth. So, Mr. Chairman, I thought these are things that we can think about to impact on our strategy, and during Q&A, we can elaborate on them more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ofosu Dorte, for your strategies for surviving and growth. Let us continue to adhere to the basic ground rules that we have set out for ourselves. I will move straight to the third resource person. It's in the person of Mr. Kofi Frimpong Korea, a partner and a tax expert with KPMG. Mr. Korea will look at the survival and growth in the context of finance and tax. So I will invite Mr. Kofi Frimpong Korea.
The catesis, read it again.
Okay, before he comes, let's quickly go through the ground rules or the Zoom meeting etiquette. Let us remember to mute our microphones unless we are asked to speak. 2, let us use the raise hand feature to indicate our intentions to ask a question. 3, use the instant messaging feature to ask questions or comment while the other person is speaking. 4, turn off your camera if you need to take care of business outside the meeting. 5, patiently wait for your turn to speak. And 6, silence the alerts on your PC or close the Outlook altogether. Without much ado, I invite Mr. Kofi Frimpong Korea.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Frimpong.
Yes, sir.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
You can kindly go ahead, sir.
Okay, good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts on how businesses can manage the situation. I've already sent my presentation, but I'll quickly probably highlight just one or two so that when the detailed presentation is shared, people can go through in detail. And I want to look at it first by going to slide 14 of my presentation, talking about one or two implications or impacts that is going to happen for the SMEs and also for members currently listening here. What we need to be looking at, and my earlier presenters have already mentioned some of them, and one of them which is critical is cash flow planning. In these times, we are likely to experience a bit of cash flow issues. Everybody is involved, everybody is impacted. So likely if you have raised invoices to other businesses, they are also impacted. So how they will settle those invoices are likely going to delay. So these are some of the issues that might impact on us. This might impact also on our ability to also service our debts. And that all these will have implications as far as our tax and our strategy in going forward is also concerned. For businesses as well, Mr. Dotte mentioned, what are the business continuity plans that we need? For small businesses, most often, these are not really documented, but it's critical that we go back to set up and plan and also decide on our business continuity issues and try and find emergency fall on as we are going forward in these times and in these days. Then, of course, there is issue also of innovation. How are we doing our work currently? we need to revise and review how we are going to go forward, even post-COVID. And I keep saying that innovation is something that we need to be looking at every now and then, whether COVID or no COVID. I mean, businesses, whether small or micro, need to look at how best can we service our clientele, how best can we move our businesses forward. And this is critical. I'm sure COVID has only facilitated the extent of the thought processes. And I believe that all of us need to sit back. How can we do the business that we've been doing over the years? I mean, digitally and electronically, or based on with different ideas, different views, for us to be able to move forward in the years ahead. People already have mentioned supply chain disruptions. With major supply sources, hubs like China shutting down, do we need to look at? There's a likely to be material shortages for our production. But then, in that case, in looking at continuity plans, we need to really look at where else can we source for our materials going forward, even post-COVID. We still have to rely on the key people that we have, or as David said, do we look at domestication? Who within our boundaries or our territories can we rely on to provide or to supply us what we've been using? And then that will also help us in going forward to manage the situation that we are critically in now. If we are sourcing from Europe and we cannot go to Europe, where else can we source from? If we are sourcing from China and we can't go to China now, where else can we source from? Do we now also even change our production methodologies? Do we change our kind of raw material that we use in looking at new things that can help us produce the same thing that we're doing to sustain our businesses and also to ensure growth? So these are also important and critical in these times. Then what I also call businesses now also need to look at what I call the 3 R's, or what we call the 3 R's. We need to retreat, review, and re-strategize. Retreating means that you sit back, look at what have we been doing, what has been the disruptions when COVID came in, and then once we are able to identify, then we can, okay, how do we re-strategize to going forward so that we are not going to face these things should even, a second pandemic similar to this or much worse than this come? How do we then go forward in that aspect? So that is also important, and we need also to be mindful of that. And that comes back to a number of us as businesses. How are these going to impact on us in terms of our tax implications? Obviously, we are going to have increased costs. So it's going to be a lot of costs. And once our cost is going to go high, then likelihood that we will be making lower incomes for taxes. So some of us are likely going to have losses. Some are going to have reduced profits for tax purposes. But then what we should also be mindful of is that as far as tax is concerned, not all the expenditures and things are allowed for tax purposes. So there's going to be that conflict. Even though our costs are going to go high, maybe the tax authorities also will not allow those costs for deduction. So that is also going to part once again on our cash flows, as I mentioned earlier. So we need to also look at the costs that we are incurring now. What costs can we put a hold on now as we are looking at dwindling incomes? Or even if income is growing, what costs that is incidental or critical that we need to incur? Likelihood that many people might not be paying us our debts, so our bad debts are going to go up. So these are other areas that as businesses we need also to start thinking collectively. If there are unnecessary or huge bad debts, can we go as a body then to meet with the revenue authorities to agree, to discuss whether, look, these bad debts are coming because of the issue or the situation that we are in now. So for this particular period, could we allow these bad debts or provisions to be allowed for tax purposes? We need to be discussing some of these things. In terms of PPEs and other protective things that we are providing for staff, we are aware that most often the revenue authorities disallow clothing allowances for our staff. We could also make a case that, these things that we are providing to safeguard the health and well-being of our staff, of our employees, should also be allowed or considered as a deductible in terms of our taxes. So this is critical, that we start thinking about this, coming collectively as a body, and start engaging the revenue authorities so that we are aware and then we know which ones that are going to comply with us. And then, as I also mentioned, cash flow, businesses now have to sit back and also reanalyze their self-assessment. Most of us are required to file self-assessments at the beginning of the year, and we also have the option to revise it as many times as we believe. So it's about time that we all sit back, replan our budget or reflect our budget and see if we set targets at the beginning of the year on which maybe we are going to pay our quarterly tax installment, we need to relook at it once again now that these COVID issues have come. Do we still maintain that we'll achieve those same targets, or we revise it? And I mean, we need to do this thoroughly to ensure that we are not probably paying taxes that we should not have been paying, or we should be paying some taxes that we are not now paying, which will come back tomorrow to haunt all of us. So we need to be mindful to ensure that we are analyzing our estimates. We are ensuring that these estimates are on time and up to date, so that we will be able to manage our cash flows. Because of course, we need the cash that we have now to also revamp our businesses. We need the working capital to be working. This is not a time to be using the working capital anyhow. So it's critical that we look at our assessment, and we need to ensure that we're also filing our returns. Of course, the revenue authorities have come up with certain aspects that we can't take advantage of, and they have issued quite a number of directives on that aspect. But we should also be mindful. We just yesterday, the Ghana Revenue Authority came up to indicate the conditions under which some of us can enjoy those benefits. I will entreat all of us to pay critical attention to it. So it's not a general one. It's not general that all of us are going to enjoy those ones. So if we are incurring certain expenditures, we need to sit back and analyze in line with the directive that has been issued, so that we are aware and mindful, so that we don't go and fall foul of any tax laws. Because if it doesn't impact us on us today, it's going to impact on us tomorrow. There are possible issues that businesses also face that also has got to do with law. We know our laws talk about, I mean, these days people are locked up and they can't travel. So the question then that comes is, for those, let's say, our people that had come to Ghana, or our people that we have sent out on businesses that are locked up and cannot come, what happens to them? In Ghana, if you come to Ghana, our law says that we pay taxes either you are a resident or a non-resident. So if our staff or our management has traveled out and they can't come in, and they tend to become a resident for tax purposes in another country, how do we manage this situation? In Ghana now, if somebody comes here and the person came as a non-resident, but then the law has caught up with him because he stayed in Ghana because of COVID, and he has become a resident, what are the tax implications for such a person? These are the things that we are engaging the government now. And per OECD has come up with a guidelines that says that if somebody becomes a tax resident because of the COVID, then that person should not be taxed in that country, but he should consider be taxed as a non-resident. So we believe, and we are engaging the revenue authority, and we believe that they might also be going on that same tangent in terms of ensuring that people are not penalized just because they've been locked up in Ghana and they cannot go out of the country because of the COVID and the rules and the laws that have been put down together by the government. So it's important that businesses also look at those aspects and consider how they are managing their staff. Other aspects that also, for me, stretch from short-term to long-term to probably disruption that we need also to be looking at is how we are going to manage our tax impact as far as our cash flows are concerned. Government once again has come out to say that yes, a number of the things, if you give donations during this time to the COVID, those things will be allowed for tax purposes. But we should also be mindful that they are saying that we need now to file our returns. So if you are incurring any of such expenditures, I would advise that we all are ensured that we are filing our returns so that we will benefit for some of these incentives that have been provided. Focus on your tax filings. I've said that over and over again because it's critical. What are your local term projections? Is there something that we can defer based on we doing our estimates again? We need to also look at business restructuring and how those restructuring will also be impacted by our taxes. So If you are doing something today and the COVID is impacting on it, how do we restructure? And we are restructuring. What are the tax implications that relates to that? What currently I also think that we need to be looking at is focusing on the taxing the digital economy. So for those of us in technology and other things, this is one critical area that we need also to be mindful that there's a lot of focus on that area as well. So if we are going to go there, we need to look at it. How do we structure it to take advantage of tax planning and other things? It's important and it's critical that we look at all those areas. There's also the issue of invoicing. So there's likely that in this COVID-19 era and even going forward, there's going to be a real look at how are we invoicing our people, how are we invoicing our businesses. So as SMEs, we also need to sit back. Can we continue to do the things that we are doing now, for which now we are stopped from doing because of COVID? How we need to consider, how do we get our invoicing done electronically? How do we get our invoices to our people, either through digital or through email or whichever? It's critical, and it's also going to be the way that governments are also going to look at in terms of taxing us, that we need to be to check. Supply chain, I've mentioned it. There's also likelihood. So we need to be sure. We are not saying that it's going to come, but for tax purposes, as I'm as being asked to talk on taxes, that we need to also, there's likelihood that the government is going to look at alternative taxes, growth in alternative taxes. Currently, in other countries, they are taxing people, or I mean, they are introducing what they call environmental taxes. They are introducing what they call specific SI taxes. They are introducing what they call turnover taxes. So these are also other areas that we also need to be looking at. That is the government also going to come that way? They haven't given the indication yet. But like I said, once other governments are doing, they are also discussing, and they are likely to also be looking at some of these areas. So if it comes, we need to now be ready to be able to give an input to it, because it's going to impact on all of us. If for those of us who read the news, only last Monday, Saudi Arabia has increased their VAT from 5% to 15%. All because of the COVID. And they are saying that they need more indirect revenues to ensure how they respond to the COVID issue. My earlier presenter indicated that they don't think that the package, the stimulus package introduced by the government, is adequate enough. Of course, yes, the government can give so much based on the resources that they have. So that is the approach the Saudi government has taken, to increase VAT from 5, like I'm saying, to 15, so that they can get more revenue to respond to the situation. Is government of Ghana going to do a similar thing? I don't know for now, but like I'm saying, other countries are doing it. So they probably might also be surveying the environment or the global net, and likely to come up with anything. So I will urge businesses like an organization and bodies like the GNCCI to be ready and available to be able to contribute when such issues are being discussed, because at the end of the day, it's going to impact on us and still impact on the same cash flow issues that I've already mentioned. Then quickly to touch on some of the strategies that we can also do in terms of our financing. We need to look at scenarios. We need to plan scenarios. Let's do a stress testing of our businesses, of our strategy, of our plan. David correctly mentioned that you can do this only when you have the strategy already. But it's not too late. If you don't have the strategy, start building the strategy from scratch today and now, because that is only when that you can be able to respond to the issues that are coming. So let's do a stress testing. What we have in the event that something similar comes tomorrow, or even now, how do we proceed going forward? It's critical. Let's also looking at optimizing our cash flows and costs. Can we minimize certain costs? Can we defer certain costs that today, so that we now re-strategize and see which costs that are very critical now for us that we need to focus on. Of course, costs like employee costs and things we cannot hire away, but do we have some aspect of staff that we can now probably let them take an unpaid leave for because maybe they are so much not, I mean, we cannot be doing that, the aspect or the kind of work that they do cannot be done now. Once again, it has its legal implications, and we also need to make sure that we are referred, when we are going to do anything, we do this in line with the labor laws, so that we also don't go foul of any labor law. We need to review the products that we are offering, our product portfolios, and then our delivery channels. what product are we offering now? What delivery channels are we using now? Can we then change the delivery channels to ensure achieve the same objective that we set ourselves? This is critical and this is important. Businesses need to do these reviews, this analysis, and this critical thinking to ensure that they are going forward in the way that they are required to go. Then reimagine their supply chains. I've already mentioned that. Focusing on customers and employees. Employee well-being, employee welfare, and customer sustenance is critical at this stage. How do we manage them? Like I said, you can make people take unpaid leave or paid leave. You can let reschedule staff from time to time. People come in today, others come in today, all to ensure that we are maintaining social distancing and also to ensuring that we are minimizing our cost. If people are doing hourly basis and there's no work for them to do, can we renegotiate with them that, okay, fine, your service is no longer required, but when maybe things improve, we can re-engage you tomorrow or today. Other countries are doing that. We could also be looking at also doing similar thing. Then leveraging on technology is also one critical area that we need to be concerned about. If we cannot be doing the same things over and over again, expecting to achieve different results or new results, we need to look at what are we doing now, what has been the impact of COVID-19, how can we leverage on technology or innovation to ensure that we achieve better results going forward. So we need to sit back once again, what technology can we apply, what technology can we adopt, and how best can we move forward in line with these issues. So to summarize, I would say that let's review our business models as we have them now. Let's optimize our operating models, and then let's sustain the financial model that we have. That will be my presentation. The full presentation will be given to people for them to look at it. So thank you very much. I'm available for other questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Frimpong. Thank you. Indeed, cash flow is very critical for survival and growth of every business. Profit is not enough. The most important thing is cash flow. And you've hit the nail right on the head. We're going to open up for questions. Let us still remind ourselves of the ground rules. And before I do that, I have some quick announcement. I know we have chamber members listening to us and watching us. Let me remind all of us that those who are here to pay their subscription, our offices are open. You can also send to us through Momo, and we will appreciate that the chamber must run. Secondly, those who are watching us and listening to us but are not members of the chamber, please come and register with the chamber. Come to the first floor of the World Trade Center, or we have regional offices. We have Tema, we have Takwa, we have Takrade, we have Cape Coast, we have Wa. Go to any of our offices, you put the location, and then Kumasi, you put the Kumasi. Kumasi is on the Cocoa Board building, second floor of the Cocoa Board building. Just walk in there and register with the chamber. It's going to be a number of these webinars, and I want everybody to participate in it. Now we have close to over 250 participants, and I think that the information that have been provided by the resource person is going to help all of us to survive in these difficult times and also grow post-COVID-19. So the ground rules for the questions, as I said earlier, if you have any question, you raise up your hand through the raise hand feature, and we can locate you or use the question chat to ask your question. Once you raise up your hand and you are called, kindly identify yourself by telling us your name, the name of your company, and where you are calling from. Either Accra, Kumasi, Takrade, wherever you are calling from, just let us know so we can acknowledge you in that. So the questions quickly. Okay, somebody said I have a Prosper. I have a contribution on how to survive, especially how to reduce cost on energy and waste disposal. Prosper, we'll come back to you for that. Let us quickly. We're going to have a series of this, and we may consider this topic along the line. But if you have time, we will come back to you. those who have raised their hands. Participants. William Texan. William
Yeah,
Texan.
yeah.
We'll take
Can
three
I?
questions at a time. Hold on. 3 questions at a time. Our resource persons will now respond to the questions and then we'll go to the next batch of questions. So, William Texan, first. We have women in business and tourism. There's no name. And then Benedicta Mensa. So, we start with William Texan. If you have a question, William.
Yes, this is William Texan from Takwa Chamber. My business name is iTex Solutions. Yeah. My quick question is that for a business that used to be a sole
William, please go ahead. William. So we have Al Hassan Kas. Mr. Al Hassan.
one is forced to quickly file their returns so that.
Hey, William has come back.
William, can you start again? You went off briefly. So kindly,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that if, let's say, your business was a sole proprietor business, and now you have moved to become a limited liability business, you are required to file your returns now. So now, can you quickly do something and file your return so that you can enjoy this package? Because let's say previously it was a sole proprietor, you were not really filing returns, and now you want to do it so that you can be eligible for the package that is coming. How do you go about it?
Okay, I think this one goes to Mr. Frimpong. So, Alasan.
Yes, good afternoon, members.
Good afternoon.
I want to find out how do I benefit from making donations to my customers. We are into hand sanitizer, baby soap, and others. So we've made a lot of donations to our customers. I want to find out how do I benefit from these donations that I make to my customers.
I guess you are talking about tax benefits, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Frimpong will answer that. Sani Abdurrahman. Abdurrahman Sani.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Abdul, go ahead, please.
Yes, okay, Abdul from GBC here. The question is that one of the resource persons talked about how maybe businesses can get loans from banks to somehow rebound and get their businesses going. But we've seen that at the last MPC, the Bank of Ghana reduced the policy rate to 14.5%. But in the end, we are seeing businesses still complaining that banks are a bit skeptical to give them or issue out loans to them. And we know this Friday, the Bank of Ghana again will be announcing the new policy rates, which some analysts are somehow expecting a reduction in the amount. If it happens that way and banks are still not reducing interest rates, banks are still not giving out loans, how then can businesses get these credits to start their business or to restore or rebound, get their businesses to rebound?
Okay, thank you very much. Our resource person, Mr. Frimpong, Prof. Kote,
okay.
and okay. So if you can respond to, I think there are a number of tax questions people want to leave. So, Mr. Frimpong.
Yeah, the first person mentioned that he is a sole proprietor and converted to a limited liability company. Maybe let me just clarify that even if you are a sole proprietor, ideally you are supposed to file your return. So, I mean, it's not that maybe you're not, if you're not filing, maybe it's something that you are wrongly doing. So maybe you need to go back and regularize that one. And then as well, to move from a sole proprietor to a limited liability company, you need to register that limited liability company. So what we can do now is that as once you have registered the limited liability company, you can do an estimate, your what the taxman called the self-assessment. So you can quickly do a self-assessment, and based on that, you file your self-assessment return. And once you do that, and you are operating, you can then take advantage of some of the benefits that have been enumerated now. So you asked about how quickly you can do that. So why you quickly can do that now, just do the estimate for the limited liability company for the year. How much you think that your revenues and your income and things will be the likely tax that you will be end up paying at the end of the year, and file that return with the revenue authority. Once you do that, and you have your tax identification number for the limited liability company, you will be able to benefit from all these that have been mentioned. So please do your self-assessment estimate and file, and you'll be fine. The second person wanted to know how they can take advantage of the donations that they are making. Let me quickly say that ordinarily, donations that do not support the businesses that you are doing are not allowed for tax purposes. So you even realize that sometimes companies will go and build a school, and then the taxman will say that no, for that school that you went to build, because maybe you did not seek permission or something from the GNCCI, or didn't get approval, or you didn't notify us, you'll not be able to get benefit of that school that you bought. So in terms of tax, donations are a bit critical for us to know how we go about it. The Ghana Revenue Authority has come out with clear guidelines on how you can benefit from such donations, and they have specifically said that the donations that will be allowed are those that are going to the government fund or the private sector fund, or that is supporting those on the health sector, the frontline workers and things. And you should have evidence that indeed you have made these donations. Evidence being the amount that you gave, the quantity, blah, 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 and then also acknowledgement of receipts from those 3 or 4 key areas that they have identified. So I'm afraid if you are only giving them to your customers, you might not qualify. I'm using might because at this stage, everything is also quite living, and then things keep changing. So my advice would be that you keep record of all such donation that you are giving, because that's where the confusion comes in. If the taxman comes tomorrow and says you gave it to your customer, how do you prove that indeed you gave it to your customer and did not sell them? So the documentation and things are critical. So for now, I will advise that if you have quantity to give, then maybe donate it to these institutions, these organized bodies that have been identified, and then they now can also now give them out to people. In that case, you stand sure of being allowed to take advantage of the donation. Other than that, now my advice is that you keep clear and appropriate records of all these ones, and then when it comes to that point, you can then discuss with the taxman for them to decide. But for now, if you are only giving it to your customers, then I will say that one, you will not get any benefit for that one. Thank you very much. I'm sure the third question goes to either Dr. Korte or Mr. David.
Thank you very much,
I
Mr.
think,
Frimpong. Okay.
yeah, I think there was one about the loan. I made a comment about the fact that it's an opportunity for people to start talking to their banks. And I had mentioned exactly what the questioner indicated about the Monetary Policy Committee dropping the interest rate by 150 basis, the base rate by 150 basis points to 14.5. And the point I'm making is that if you have a loan with a bank, that loan is a contractual document between you and the bank. There are 2 opportunities I can identify. One is the drop in the rate, and second is the fact that I expect the banks to have some increase in liquidity as a result of the failure of the directive by Bank of Ghana to suspend the payment of dividends until further notice. Definitely, you are going to plow back this money into the system, and you have some amount of liquidity. And I think that COVID by itself opens the door for businesses to start talking to their banks now. Can I renegotiate the terms of payment of my loan? Unless you sign the kind of contract that does not open your up for renegotiations, or can you actually defer a bullet payment? So all these are opportunities you can take advantage of, and I think it's a question of talking to a bank on a specific basis. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Frimpon and David. Let me quickly go to the test. There are some questions here. Um,
Can I make a quick comment on
okay,
the
Prof.
that question? Yes.
Okay, kindly go ahead, sir.
Yes. Yes. I just wanted to share my experience. I serve on the board of a financial institution and also on the credit appraiser subcommittee. You see, the gentleman mentioned spoke about the inertia when, although the policy rate has been reduced, um, banks are unwilling or less willing or a bit careful in lending to some customers. That might be right in the sense that let's bear in mind that the loans are supposed to be repaid. So any credit application that comes before us, we appraise, we look at your cash flow, we look at the risk factors. It's not every, although the interest rate have been dropped, it's not every business opportunity that gets funded. It has to be profitable. You also have to think about repayment because you are managing customers' funds. Today, if they should come for their money, you should have enough liquidity to pay back. So I agree with him. In some cases, banks are a bit careful, particularly in this era where the risk is quite high in certain activities. But saying that banks have more liquidity now as a result of the recapitalization. So they are willing to lend, but they will lend to sectors or to businesses that can repay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me quickly go to Mr. Idris Bamba. Your hand has been up for a long time. Mr. Idris Bamba, are you there? Idris Bamba. Okay, now let's go to the chat. Mr. Frimpong.
Yes, sir.
Some of the members want to know they have issue with their tax payment and tax
Hello.
filing. Hello.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Idrisu. Okay, Idrisu, kindly go ahead, please.
Hello.
Idrisu, go ahead.
Hello.
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 Idrisu, go ahead.
Hello. Yeah, my microphone was muted. Hello.
We can hear you.
Hello.
Idrisu, we can hear
Please go
you.
ahead.
Go ahead.
I think the network is very bad. Hello. Yeah. Please, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we
Yes.
can hear you.
Yeah. My name is Junaid Idris Bamba.
Okay, Mr. Frimpong, whilst we wait for Idrisu, ni
Oh, it's on.
Fight you for the incentive government is about to give to businesses, or there are some other technicalities involved. That is my question. Hello.
okay, thank you very much, Mr.
Yes,
Hello.
sir. It will be answered. Don't
Please,
worry.
was
We
my
are,
question
we are
clear?
taking more questions.
Hello.
Okay. So was my question
Yes.
clear?
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Speaking. Okay. Mr. Nee Pabi want to know how do you do self assessment for tax purposes in this COVID-19 period? How do you do self assessment for tax purposes in this COVID-19 period? From Nee. And then Maureen, how can a large informal sector with issues around payment of tax assess the COVID-19 relief fund? Sorry. How can a large informal sector with issues around payment of taxes assess the COVID-19 relief fund? So I think they are all tax related. So Mr. Frimpong.
Yes, sir. Okay, I think I'll start from the last one, the person who is asking how the large informal can access the fund. I think as the president of the chamber indicated in his address, the fund is being administered by the National Board for Small Scale Industries. So at this stage, they will come up with who qualifies and who does not qualify. And I'm sure they will be looking at your business profile and other things. So I will advise that people should not be afraid and then go. Probably what I advise is that register with your body. So maybe if you're a member of the GNCCI, it will probably put you in a good stead to be able to qualify. So join any of the business associations, join the Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and then maybe collectively you people can submit your request through them to the NBFSSI for probably you people to assess. What I also want to add though is that look, it's important that whether you are in the formal or informal sector, we all try as much as possible and be filing our returns. A time is coming, and I'm sure COVID is really probably facilitating that time where if you are not filing your returns, you may not be able to access anything because if tax filing and assessing all these things become digital and online, they will request for your TIN. And if you don't have TIN, you may not even be able to access the portals and things to be able to do business. So that is just an advice that I'll give to people. So please register with your body, go to the GNCCI, go to maybe AGI, go to probably PEF, and try as much as possible and then liaise with the NBSSI to assess the fund. It's open to everybody to improve businesses. So if you're already an established business with records and everything, then you can assess it. That is my view. My
Mr.
other,
Frimpong,
yes, sir.
just to add quickly, there is already the law that limits your ability to access a lot of services when you don't have a TIN number. That law is already there.
Okay, anyway.
including even being able to file cases in court, etc. What
Okay.
has not happened is that because we don't have these things online and everything digitized, it's not been implemented properly. But because COVID has forced us to digitize a number of things, in fact, COVID has essentially moved everybody from analog to a digital world.
To digital.
So businesses are warned. Shortly, when GRA realizes that they need more money and they activate that law, there are a lot of services you cannot access without having a TIN number and filing your taxes. So the law is already there.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you, David.
Mr. Frimpong, I think
Yes,
they should rather register with the chamber and not any
there were
other
two other
association.
questions, so I'll try and answer them.
Doesn't matter. Let's ignore.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, I'll try to give options. Sorry.
Mr. Boaji, I will not comment.
Mr. Go ahead.
Person wanted to know how do you do self-assessment and file your returns?
Yes, please.
Self-assessment is easy. All that you need to do is that you need to sit back and indicate, list all your likely income that you get for the year. So maybe if you are selling, let's say, hand sanitizers, which is in vogue now, you just make an estimate that, okay, this hand sanitizer that I'm selling, how many will I sell this year? So that one comes to probably maybe 1 million Ghana cedis. Then at the same time, you also analyze and assess yourself, okay, if I'm going to sell 1 million Ghana cedis worth of hand sanitizer, what will be my cost? what my operation costs? So you buy the ingredients, you pay your warehouse, you pay your staff, you pay your employees. So at the end of the day, you prepare something like a simple profit and loss account. And that will then give you your position. So based on that, you know your position. So it's based on that position. So the self-assessment is an estimate that you yourself are making. So you sit back and analyze. So you make that estimate, and then based on that estimate, you also estimate the likely tax. Currently, businesses pay taxes of at 25% on your profit. So if you are a limited liability company, then you pay 25%. But however, if you are a self-employed, a sole proprietor, if you are a sole proprietor, you pay taxes as if you are an individual. So the profit that you get, you pay an individual tax, which goes into the normal PAYE or the pay as you earn. And that there's a graduated rate that you use and apply, but the highest band for an individual is currently 30%. So you are likely to pay a bit of your income at a rate of 30%, a bit at 5%, a bit at 17%. So it's graduated. So that's how we do it. So please, that's how you make your own self-assessment. And based on that, that is what you yourself have done. So you then determine that, okay, based on what I have done, I'm supposed to pay tax of 100,000 for the whole year.